really excited to be here with you today. I'm the host and publisher of the Lead Up podcast, Mike Harbour. Today's episode 479. We're rolling through 2026 already. And look, on the Lead Up podcast, we explore all things leadership, what it means to lead at work, lead at home. Most importantly, lead yourself so you can be a better steward of those that you do lead in the various roles that you have. We believe leadership is not just about results. It's about alignment. It's about purpose. It's about impact. That's what our conversation is all about today. And my guest is someone who's a returning guest. He's also a great friend, and he's helping redefine leadership in a way that feels both timely and timeless. It's very important. We have major needs in the space of leadership today, especially in the healthcare space where Tom and I spend most of our time together. Tom Dahlborg is also the author of From Heart to Head and Back Again. What makes this book especially powerful is it's not just one perspective. Tom actually brought in some collective voices in his second edition of this book of leaders and thinkers and practitioners in the space of healthcare leadership, all pointing toward a better way to lead and live. Tom, welcome to the Lead Up podcast. So good to have you again, my friend.
Hey, Mike, I appreciate that. Like you said, it's a return for me. Again, you've blessed me a number of times, and every time I come on, I learn something new from you, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. We've talked a lot over the last year, mainly through email and LinkedIn and text messages. We've also done some collaborative work on your second edition of this book, From Heart to Head and Back Again. And I'd like for you to just talk about the origin story a little bit, Tom. It's not just an idea, but the book itself, because again, this is a book you wrote once before. You brought in a few different voices this time, some contributing authors to help tell the story. What inspired you to rewrite the book? What's new about it? And why did you bring in these other voices to help you this time?
It's a great question. And the original version of it began with, actually, I was being interviewed for someone else's book, and they stopped the recording. And they said, Tom, you need to write a book. Because at that point, I had worked in healthcare about halfway through my career. And I was sharing a little bit about my own health journey and how I was that person who ended up on that table. And I was that person that was told they would never work again. And I was that person that they said, get in line for a heart transplant. And so through my own health journey, I got to see the healthcare system both through the eyes of a leader within the system, but also as that patient. I got to see the flame of goodness within healthcare that we could fan, and also those opportunities. And so I wrote the original book, and we published it, I believe, in 2020. And yet, here comes the pandemic. Here comes the pace of change within healthcare is just beyond, with AI and all these other aspects impacting so many different people. And we have such good people in healthcare. So as I was thinking about the original and I was thinking about where we could go from here, I thought about and I prayed on, who are those leaders that I want to reach out to? Who are those voices that have different lenses than I do that can add perspective, that can add additional goodness so that we can elevate the voices and that we can truly spearhead additional change, transformation, and do that in a more quicker and efficient way. And Mike, you were at the top of the list. We're engaged with the Gratitude Symposium that was put on by Quint Studer during the pandemic. And I got to learn about your philosophy around leadership. And so I said, okay, I want to talk to Mike. Kimberly Dahlborg is a doctorate in nursing. She's a nurse practitioner. Brilliant. And here she has this faith-fueled process to deliver change. There's Kristen Wood, a physician who I got to meet in Michigan that's now in Canada, doing brilliant work in the coaching space, and so many others. And I said, those are the voices that I want to learn from myself. And then I'm hoping additional people will also learn from. And it's been a brilliant journey. And again, to partner with you and those people and many others has been a dream come true.
Yeah, I love that, Tom. What did you see? Talk to me about when you were on that table. That was the genesis and the thesis of the book. What did you see in the healthcare system that was an aha for you? You went from, okay, I'm a leader in this space to now I'm patient in this space. What was the big aha for you it kind of gave you this new renewed energy to say, I need to put this stuff in a book and really help in a bigger way?
Yeah, it's the best way to do is probably through stories. As an example, at that point in my career, I was developing what we called at that time pay for performance programs. I was working in military healthcare. I worked in managed care, profit, nonprofit, the whole gamut. I worked on the provider side, the health system, the hospital side. And so here I am now on the table. I'm petrified. I have young children. My bride's a nurse and she's brilliant. And yet now she's home with the children as I'm staying overnight. And I'm told, wasn't sure if I was going to leave that hospital ever. And I had a nurse come in the middle of the night, pitch black, sits at the edge of my bed and she holds my hand and she looks at me deeply in the eyes and she says 4 words that changed my life. She said, Tom, I've got you.
Mm.
It was that, Mike. It was that human connection. It was that love that she was sharing. It was that got me through that moment and got me through the next moment. It got me to the morning till my bride was with me again. And then I carried that forth. And so those are those flames of goodness I talk about. It's these people. Darlene Kroner is another person that's part of this book. And she's one of those people. She's a nurse leader. And Jennifer Bowe as well. And it's these people that truly love for love's sake, that truly care, that got into nursing because they want to help heal. They want to help people. And so here I am, more financial hat and these aspects that I brought to the table when I entered healthcare. And yet it was the love and that humanity and the goodness of humanity that really caught my attention. When I did get better, I said, that's it. That's what I want to continue to help shine a light on and ideally position people to thrive even more, because healthcare is hard. It's obvious. Healthcare is hard and people are being harmed. Patients and families being harmed, clinicians being harmed. Throughout the system, there's harm. There's also goodness. And I want to flame that goodness.
Yeah, that's so good. Tom, people ask me, I've written a couple books myself, and people ask me, why'd you write a book? You get rich off that book? Look, I don't sell books, right? I didn't write a book to sell books. I give away way, way more than I sell. The reason I wrote the book is to help more people, because in the relationships I have, it's often one-to-one or one to a few hospitals or healthcare companies. Your book is helping many people. I'm so grateful that you wrote the book, right? Because it helps get your message out. It helps get the stories out, the one you just shared, the stories of others. I want to ask you this: what's different about the second edition, and then how's the message different by bringing in some different voices? I'm giving you 3 questions here. I'm gonna let you ask all of them. Now, what's different? What did the different voices bring? And then this feels more like a movement than a message, right? It feels more like a movement than a book. So talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, as part of the book, back when I initially published the original,
Mhm.
I had reflections. So I would tell a story and then I would reflect on it from a leadership perspective or other. And then I would ask folks questions. And as I said, the pace of change in healthcare is quickened. And so I'm like, okay, now it's 2026. There's different thoughts, different reflections to be shared, both mine and others. There's different stories to be shared, both mine and others. And so those are the main differences. It's those different lenses. It is Dr. Kalawale Bankole and sharing his story about working in rural health with people are saying, please just see me, and him telling that story. It's his own story of an African-American man that was used within healthcare as opposed to wanted within healthcare, and how he overcame and he never lost his self. It's Amy M. Lee sharing her story and her mother's story of being a Vietnamese boat person, people, her mother and herself, leaving right at the end of Vietnam, and then coming to Seattle, and here's Amy and Lee herself with a heart condition and this incredible physician caring for her and literally saving her life. And then read her own books about that entirety of that story and what her mother and she went through. It's just, I'm saying, but the point is, I wanted people like you and those folks and others that I've mentioned their stories to come out because I only have one lens to look through and I can try to look through others. And we talk about like with empathy, walking other shoes. We really can't. We need to recognize that empathy is important, but at the same time, we can never walk fully in someone else's shoes. I wanted those shoes to be filled. I wanted your story to come out, Ben Coley's story to come out, Jenny's story to come out, and to embrace and help others. So yes, it's a movement around transformation. It's a movement about connecting people, creating community, identifying those flames of goodness, and then together fanning them as we also improve the system.
Yeah, I love that because, yeah, we all learn from different people, the different stories, the different perspectives. So I just love, Tom, that one, grateful that you invited me in to be a part of that, but just love the learning from others, the stories. I guess it was a month or so ago, we had a round table where you brought us all together on a virtual session. And that was really my first time talking to a few of them. I love Darlene Kuna, by the way. Fantastic. Just a great heart. But it was really my first time talking and really hearing the stories of people that were a part of this project, this book, this movement that you put together. So thank you for that, and thank you for the message that you're putting out into the world. Let's unpack the core concept a little bit, the idea from the book, which is this idea of heart-centered leadership. Tell us what you mean by that, and why is it not a common thing, or is it more common than we think it is, or and why is it so important, Tom?
I love that question for lots of different reasons, including Deborah Crow is part of this book. When I think of heart-centered leadership, I think about her. I think about her books, about her processes, her approaches, her her ability to connect at that heart level and help drive people forward and lead to goodness. Now, so let me say this, in addition to Deborah and what she does, how she does it, what I found, and I have a research background, what I found since the book, Crossing the Quality Chasm, came out in 2001, patient safety. This is 2026. Very little has taken place to improve patient safety since 2026. I'm going to say that a little bit differently. Lots has been done, very little impact. We have not significantly improved patient safety since 2001. Since we, as a community, recognized patient safety is an issue, we think patient experience. Very little change, very little improvement since 2016 on a national level. So on individual levels, perhaps. On a national level, not so much. Long story short, we have a huge mountain to climb before us, and it's going to take all of us.
Mhm.
What I have found with those situations, and I've gotten to work, and I'm blessed to work in military healthcare, although I'm not military, and I know you are, so thank you for your service, is when I'm working with veterans, when I'm connecting with veterans, and I hear their stories, and I hear their stories about climbing that mountain, when I hear their stories about their team, what gets them through that? Well, it's planning. It's not necessarily the plan, but it's the planning process, that connection. What does Mike Tyson say? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
He's a great philosopher, right?
No, like, you got Mr. Rogers, you got Mike Tyson.
Right.
But what gets them through it? It's their love of one another. It's their love of one another. It's that I'm doing this for my brothers and sisters in arms. When I was in the VA hospitals, I would get constantly when I'm sitting in the lobby and I'm talking to veterans, we did what we did because we loved one another. It's love. That is, I use the term force multiplier. It's love that we truly need to bring back into healthcare. So when you say heart-centered leadership, that to me that's the love. That's our ability to connect heart, mind, and soul, or the heart and head and our bad soul, to position us to climb any mountain regardless of the system, to create goodness regardless of the payment model, to ensure that we're doing the right thing always, not when people are watching, not when no one's watching, not when, I'll say it this way, always. We need to do the right thing always. That's honor. That's integrity. That's what we need. And to do that, we need courage. Root word on the courage is core, which means heart. To me, that's the love. So when I think about what you just said, this book, this transformation, these people, it's about creating this transformative, loving methodology to carry us forward.
So good. Love that term, force multiplier. I'm working on a new book, 9 force multipliers for elite leadership. some things I'm putting together. So I love that term because they are, when we get better at that, right? That love piece, just connection is so important. Instead of using force, it multiplies our force as a leader, right? Where old school leadership is using force to move people, to hold people accountable. The style of leadership has to be different today. I've heard you talk about the chasm of quality and patient safety before, and nothing's changed really since 2001. And I play in a little bit different circle than you on the leadership side. I often say the same thing about employee engagement. Employee engagement has basically not moved in the last 30 years. It's been basically the same, lack of only 30% of our workforce engaged over the last 25, 30 years. And that's where I spend my time, is trying to create leaders that can move that needle and really engage their employees. What, in your experience, and you've done this for a long time, you've worked with a lot of people, you've coached lots of people, worked with Quint Studer, you've talked with lots of leaders. What's missing, Tom? What's missing from that elite leadership, that force of love in the leadership that we do? And how do we get back? Because that's really what your book is, from heart to head and back again.
That's spot on. There are brilliant tools and brilliant tactics, brilliant approaches, brilliant systems. There's so much, the plethora of it. But as we just talked about, the improvement isn't there. Why is that? And it's lots of different reasons. But one of the things that I found with speaking with is, in many cases, it's either the inability or the choice to not first look in that mirror. We are very good. We're in healthcare and industry for the most part. We're fixers. We see something broken, we're going to fix it until it becomes us. Until we actually either, like I said, when we finally do look in that mirror, that's the hard part.
No, Tom, you're stepping on my toes here, man. Come on. Yeah, we're in. Keep going.
Yeah. And for me as well, again, I go through this illness. I recognize, and it wasn't easy. Here I am, part of the problem. I'm building pay for performance systems. I'm building financial incentives to try to engage people to create goodness. Not understanding that what I've just done was take this intrinsic goodness that people have, especially in healthcare, that want to help, that want to make a difference, that want to heal, or walk hand in hand with someone on their dying journey. I've taken that and turned it into a transaction for a financial gain. As Harvard Business Review has shown, and other studies, once we've put financial incentives in healthcare, what we've just done is, like I said, we've taken that intrinsic goodness, that altruistic aspect, that love that lives in all of us, and we changed it. We built a system that made it now an extrinsic goal. Here's your accountability. Here are your metrics. Thank you notes. Thank you notes is a good thing on its face until you start saying, how many thank you notes did you do this week?
Right.
You only did 8, you needed 10. You got to write 10 more, whether you believe it or not, whether you actually are grateful or not. We've taken the goodness and we've turned it into transaction. And Mike, that's the easy stuff. It's those tactics. Those are easy. Check the box. Yeah, I did thank you notes. I've done this some reps. But we've taken the humanity. We've taken, I would even say, the God out of what we're trying to do with one another, which is to connect heart to heart, which is truly to love one another, not to gain, not for that metric, but because we truly love one another. And it does, I know you and I've talked about this before, it starts with us. And for me, it started with me hitting my knees, asking for forgiveness for all the brokenness that I've helped to create, and then to change and improve. And it is hard because you're only, not only you seeing, you might think is the goodness in that mirror, you're also seeing the warts, you're seeing the darkness. And now you need to address both. You need to thank God for all your goodness, and you need to seek his help to actually address the warts and to move out of that darkness.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, look, God is love, right? Tom's a man of faith. I'm a man of faith. So we talk about this, share this with each other, but God is love. Leadership, great leadership begins with that. I learned from John Maxwell years ago, Tom, just something that stuck with me because growing up, I grew up in a very tough environment, lots of dysfunction, abuse, just not a great childhood. So I didn't really learn this idea of loving self, number one, and then others, number two, right? There wasn't a lot of compassion, those kinds of things. But I always gravitated toward leadership as I'm assertive, I'm aggressive, I'm loud. And for some reason, that made me a leader. I wasn't really a leader, but I gravitated toward that. I got appointed into leadership roles, those kind of things, because I wasn't afraid to speak up, take things on. But I learned from John Maxwell, luckily along the way, that you can lead people or you can love people without leading them, but you can't lead them without loving them. And I had to learn to love the people that I led, right? Not love the results, not love, what I get out of it because they get some results from me. Because the reality is, not everybody's going to get the same results. They're not going to do it as well as I would do it, maybe the way I want them to do it. But I need to love them as a human being first, and maybe they will do more. They do better. They give me more effort. But man, I had to do some internal work like you, like, Lord, help me, forgive me for where I have failed in this. And I think there's a lot of people have to learn to love themselves too. There's some, yeah, I've heard Quint say this. I've said this a lot too. You got to show yourself some grace because we're going to make some mistakes along the way as well. But I just love how you frame that up. It's love is at the center of it. We have to love other people. It's not the metric. It's not the spreadsheet. It's not the bottom line. However, I do want you to speak into this. We often say without margin, there's no mission. So I'd love for you to just talk about those things a little bit. I know you had some thoughts about what I just said, but also talk about the margin mission thing.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. You're spot on as far as no margin, no mission, and also no mission, no margin, especially in healthcare. And it's really interesting to me. So Dahlborg, and he's part of IHI, and he was in CMS for a while, just brilliant physician and pediatrician and truly cares. He himself, when we think about metrics, he himself has said really recently, I think I saw him at Michigan State, that we need to cut measurement in healthcare by 70 to 80%. We are defaulting to manager as opposed to leader. We can manage numbers. We lead people. And so when I think about that, and then I start thinking about William Bruce Cameron said, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. How many times have we heard if you can't measure it, you can't manage it? And people will say, Deming said that, or Drucker said that. Neither said that, and neither believed it. And in fact, Deming said just the opposite. He said, it is wrong to suppose that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. It's a costly myth. So when I think about what you were just talking about, again, we need managers. We need managers to manage stuff. We need leaders like you, Mike, who understands that the most enduring results actually begins with people. We need managers, leaders like you and the folks that are part of this book, because they do connect heart and head, and they do bring forth the goodness because they connect at the human level, and they're doing it for the right reasons. And I just think there's huge opportunity for all of us to consistently pause, see where we're coming from, see if we're starting to go that dark place or if we're remaining in the light, and then continue to drive that light.
That's good. You've mentioned that when leadership becomes disconnected from the human side, there's a real cost. Tom, what are you seeing organizations struggle with most right now? Where's that cost landing? What's the impact of that? Because if you talk about the bottom line, that's a metric that most organizations measure, right? Their EBITDA. If you talk about that, how's the leadership disconnectedness from the human side impacting that?
I can tell you this, when I continue to work in healthcare and I hear often from administrators, people on the C-suite, including physicians, I cannot do that with that being what's best for that patient or what's best for the community or what's best for that care team until I get paid for that. So when I hear about physicians especially, but also nurses, and again, I'm married to an incredible nurse. When I hear about burnout and I hear about moral injury, and I talk to these physicians and they'll say to me, I didn't do what was right because there wasn't a number or a dollar figure or whatever, or I was going to be held accountable for doing, and I was going to get in trouble basically for not doing the right thing. I'm just saying, just the opposite. I'm going to get held accountable for not doing the wrong thing, even though I know what the right thing to do is all the time. We can't do that because we're not going to get paid for it. And I get it. There's I'll CFO. There's realistic, pragmatic aspects. And yet, when it comes to I'm doing the wrong thing and it's going to hurt that person, that is unforgivable. And that is happening far too often. And that is the disconnect between love and management, or even the type of leadership we're seeing far too often. We can do far better. And we have people that want to do far better. And just like you and I, we all make mistakes. And we have to look in that mirror and really own the mistakes and then get better together.
Yeah, but there's a real ripple effect to that, right? What you just talked about. I can do it once, but then there's the moral injury. That's the term that since COVID has came out, the moral injury. And over time, that moral injury does damage to the trust in patient care, damage between colleagues in an organization, which all impact culture. And culture is a huge driver of success, of bottom line as well. So, what's your message to senior leaders, Tom, to get engaged with this topic that we're talking about right now and move the needle, not just talk about it? Because again, you mentioned, as I did, we've been talking about patient safety, we've been talking about engagement for 30 years with no real impact. Now we got to do something now, right? In the next 5 years, there's real impact that has to be happens or has to happen. So what's your message to senior leaders right now to really get engaged and move the needle for impact on heart-centered leadership to impact obviously their bottom lines? Because that's what the CEOs are going to say. How's that going to impact my bottom line?
Sadly, that's true. Sadly, that's true. And I hear a lot of people talk about, if you create a loving organization, or if you do X, Y, or Z, you'll have a better bottom line. You'll make money. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think we've had the studies. We've had the longitudinal studies to say that's true. Honestly, I don't care. Because at the end of the day, we do need to do the right thing. And if we do need to change the system because the system rewards badness or wrongness or harm, which it currently does, we need to fix that. So I would say to all the leaders at the C-suite, politicians and so forth, let's be bold and let's be courageous. And if that takes some hardship, if it means we have to carry our cross, if it means that we have to sacrifice, then let's sacrifice, because we're hurting people. And as I do a lot of work with children too, we're hurting children. And it's unconscionable, some of the things that are happening. And yet, and as we talked about earlier, there are good people in the system. There are good people doing bad things. I was one of those. There's good people that are doing good things. Let's get those good people and let's all be courageous and let's do the right thing always. And if it means that we're going to have some financial disturbances, fine. Let's live with it. Let's be innovative together and let's make it better. Because continuing to put a Band-Aid on the system as it currently stands and continue to harm people, no wonder people don't sleep at night.
Yeah.
We can do better together.
Yeah, that may be something good for you and I to do together, Tom. We're going to talk business real quick on this podcast. Maybe we help define some of those metrics for a love-based, heart-centered based organization and do that study. Again, that's just an idea that popped in my head while we were talking. We might need to look at that. But here's the reality, right? You mentioned this. There are good people in an organization who will do bad things, not intentionally, right? It more looks like this. They just don't do the right thing because they're afraid to do the right thing. And that would be considered a bad thing, right? By most people. But we got to get leaders engaged in that conversation for sure, because I'm a believer that most people, I think it's changed a little bit, but most people, especially in mine and your lifetime, most people went into healthcare because they wanted to take care of people. It was this mission. I want to take care of people. I want to do great good. There's a great calling in healthcare. I know even Quint Studer wrote a book, The Calling, I think is the title of that book, where you're talking about it's this calling, right, in healthcare. I think there's some people over maybe the last 20 years went into healthcare because it was more of a stable job and they came in for the stability and not necessarily the purpose of it. So there's some collision of mindset and attitude certainly there that we've got to do business with for sure. But again, we can't solve the problem today, but where do you see the gaps in leadership? Are leaders aware of what you are talking about, or is it just a blind spot for them?
I think it depends on the leader. And again, a lot of people that are in leadership positions, they're really managers and they're learning how to be a leader. And I know you preach mentoring. And I think that's incredibly important. Developing mentoring programs from a true leader to help that manager become a true leader, become that courageous leader, become that person that will say what needs to be said and fight the battle that needs to be fought, because that is why leaders exist. Managers can manage status quo. It's the leaders that need to step up and step in when there's brokenness, when the aberration takes place, when we start going down those wrong paths. So I think we have huge opportunities to really help those that maybe have that blind spot or have been so beat down and they're just trying to get through the day so they can survive because we're in survival mode. Again, it's across the spectrum of what the challenges are by leader. And yet, as you said earlier, a little while ago, if we can define what that true, courageous, loving leader looks like and what those pieces are, we can help people get there. We can create the systems that position people to get there. Because we both just said, there are good people in bad systems and they're doing bad things because of the system. And my point is, let's be bold and courageous and let's do the good things regardless of the system. Let's position people to do that and then create the goodness within those systems that we need as well.
Yeah, that's good. I spend a great deal of my time coaching and doing leadership development in the hospital. I sometimes feel guilty. Tom, you just made me feel better, less guilty about calling people up, right? Because I talk to a lot of people. They're just tired. I'm talking about like senior level executives. I'm just trying to get to retirement, and they got 10 years left. And I'm like, I think you need to quit now. I tell them that. I think if you're just trying to get to retirement, you need to quit now because you're not leading well. And they could fire me when I tell them that. They're paying me to tell them hard things, but I've had leaders. I've got one CEO I've been coaching for a couple of years now. He was trying to run from the job when I first started coaching him, and now he's got an organization that's thriving just because I challenged him on that. You're giving up because it's a little hard. By the way, you're the CEO. It's going to be hard. I do think we have to do the hard. And again, I'm not walking in their shoes. It's easy for me because I've been self-employed for 20 years plus now, and I understand the risk of maybe not making a paycheck, but too many people get stuck there too about not doing the right thing because they're afraid to lose their income. And I certainly understand that, but we do have to lead courageously and do some things differently to change the outlook, change the future, and be future ready for sure. Let's just transition here. Again, we could probably spend 2 or 3 hours talking on these things, but I want to make sure we get close to landing the plane. You've said we already know how to lead this way, like back again, right? From heart to head and back again. It suggests that we know how to lead this way, but we've just drifted, Tom. From your perspective, and maybe some of the contributors or others, what do leaders lose? Why do leaders lose that connection in the first place? And then maybe some practical steps to get it back up, other than be courageous. What are some practical steps that we could give our listeners?
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I was quoting Tacitus earlier today on LinkedIn, who was talking about basically saying the more laws you have, the more corrupt your society is. When we actually have courage and love and honor and trust, we need less laws. We need less rules. We don't have to create the explicitity within those because we already know what the right thing to do is. When I think about Marcus Aurelius and some of the other great leaders from back in the day, Lincoln, we know what a leader is. We all quote these leaders, and yet we don't do this. Why is that? Again, it's different by different people. What I love about you and what you do is just what you said. This is why I wanted you in the book. You say what needs to be said. And I know the way you coach, you say what needs to be said for that person, but guess what? It might be something different that needs to be said for the next person. We need people like you. And if you happen to know Sean George's and his incredible book on mission about leadership, again, we need these type of people, you, Sean, and others that truly know how to connect with and identify what those real barriers are. Oftentimes what we're looking is for the easy button. We want everything to be cookie cutter. It's not. We're humans. We need to connect with people on a relationship basis. We need to understand who they are, what they've been through. I might be coming into something because of abuse in my past, and I might be driving and acting and behaving in certain ways because of some of this other stuff. No excuse, but a rationale. We need people like you or others, like Sean and others, that will say what needs to be said, role model what needs to be role model, and help those people through. To me, that has been the best way that I've learned and grown was people who have been through it, who understand it and can help me look in that mirror, see my warts, and help me get better.
Yeah, so good. I was just coaching a CEO a couple weeks ago, and I couldn't believe it. Really, I can because I've done this for so long. But she said she doesn't feel like it's her job to know her people. That's not what she gets paid to do. And because I asked her, she'd been in this role for about 6 months as a CEO. I said, "When's the last time you had lunch with your employees? Your two employees." She's got two direct reports, and she said during the interview process. I said, "So you haven't had a meal with your two employees in 6 months, and what do you know about them? What do you know about their goals?" That's not my job. My job not to know that. My job is to run this organization. I just found that sad, really, Tom, because it lacks heart, right? It lacks human connection. And she's probably going to struggle in her role as well. Not probably. She's already lost one of those employees. One has resigned, and that's part of it because there was no human connection. There's probably going to lose the other one as well. And again, as you mentioned earlier, I spent time in the military. The military has a rule, no fraternization, which means don't have connection with those that you outrank. And I'm a contrarian, Tom. I had relationship with people above me. I was so naive or blind or whatever. I was teaching. You mentioned Deming earlier. I was teaching Focus PDCA, TQM, Edward Deming's philosophy to full bird colonels, and here I am, an E5, E6 lieutenant in the Army. I didn't have enough sense to know that I couldn't teach people above me, and certainly I had friends that I outrank. I just feel like that's important. But I've always been good about drawing that line too, right? Like I am the leader here, but I had that respect. And I think that's what Tom's talking about here on in his book and on this episode is you can be the leader and set yourself at a bar above, but call everybody up to that. You're not better than. You have to go back down or go back again and bring people up with you, bring people back to this heart-based leadership, especially in healthcare, because that's the way healthcare was designed because of this heart calling, right? Just speak into that just a little bit, Tom, as we wrap up here.
Yeah, when you think about the Hippocratic Oath, and you think about the sacredness of healthcare, you think about, as Darlene Kuna would talk about, caritas and the ability to be present and to honor and to love one another. And again, help people on their healing journey or on their dying journey, or help people on their mental health healing journey, emotional health healing journey, spiritual health healing journey. And it's this sacred thing that we've turned and made transactional.
Mhm.
We've made it about the money. We've made it about that's the goal, is the money. We need to change that. Yeah, I do want to touch base on what you just said about that leader you're working with. I had a leader similar that said to me at one point, I don't want to share gratitude with my team. It's no, that's what they're getting
Mm.
paid to do. Oh,
Yeah.
and then
Scary,
one
isn't
of
it?
yeah. And I went to the place of, okay, why? I want to understand where that's coming from. What created that in you that led you to that point? Because it's hurting you and it's hurting most people and it's hurting your mission. And I think, again, that is the way we help people evolve and move beyond that current state. Because again, we're all what?
Yeah.
I'll tell my wife all the time, I said, I'm a vile wretch and I have huge opportunities before me. I need God to help me see what those opportunities are and move forward. And I need people like you to help me to get better. When we start to create that system where we can hit our knees, ask for help, and do the honorable thing always, we've done something special.
Yeah. Thank God for great women that put up with us, Tom, and give us chance after chance. You're what Tom's talking about. There's a wound somewhere in that leader he just described and the leader I just described that creates that mindset. One of the Tom, you've got a copy of my book, Quit Losing Talent. The first chapter in that book is Target Check Your Values. And so what we do is we help leaders and organizations identify their top 3 to 5 values, define those, define the value itself, define the behaviors that model that. But then I challenge every leader to go have one-on-one discussions with all of their people and say, okay, if you have a value of trust, Tom, how would you define trust? Because your value of trust or your definition of trust may be much different than mine. I grew up in a home where I couldn't trust the two people who led me for a better part of my youth anyway, up until I was about 12 years old. And so my definition of trust may look different than someone who grew up in a home where it was healthy and there's lots of love and they could trust. And so I think it's important as leaders, we do get to understand those that we lead. That's Stephen Covey's 7 Habit of Seek First to Understand Before Being Understood. That first book I ever read, by the way, Tom, at 23 years old. But I think as leaders, if you haven't sought to understand, if you haven't spent time getting to understand and connect to the heart of those that you lead, you're going to struggle in leadership. And I think that's the premise of Tom's book here, is really just slowing down, taking pause, connecting with those that you lead, connecting with others around you. Seek first to understand their perspective so that you can lead differently instead of just leading from the perspective, the flaws, whatever it may be that you bring to the table. Tom?
I love that you said that. I love that you brought up Covey. And a lot of people don't realize Covey actually talks about love. I think his quote is love, trust, and managing people with a dedication to helping them reach their full potential. That's what leaders truly do. Exactly. Exactly. And the other point that you made me think about was something I know you preach and I know you've put in a book is leaders need to model vulnerability. We need to model that we, again, all of our flaws, our challenges, whatever vulnerability looks like for us, we need to model, not remain there, but rather highlight for folks what our vulnerabilities are and then be courageous as we tackle them and we tackle the hard stuff for ourselves, which means therefore we're doing it for them as well. Again, when I first thought about expanding, evolving this book, and I thought about what your values are, I wanted those types of messages and I wanted you.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Look, Lead Up listeners, I meant to show a copy of the book earlier for those of you who are watching on YouTube. Go find this book on Amazon. And where else, Tom? Where else, or where can they find it? Probably your website as
Yeah,
well.
my website and Amazon, those are the two best places.
Tell us your website link real quick.
So it's Dahlborg. So it's my last name, dahlborghlg.com.
dahlborghlg.com, amazon.com. We'll make sure we put links to the book in the show notes. We'll put a link to Tom's website in the show notes as well. I love talking to you. Just, it reminds me, I got to keep growing. I got to get better. I got to continue to work on my own servant heart, servant leadership. This is just a call back to that. I hope it was a call back to those that were listening today. Share this episode with other leaders around you. Look, this is not this episode and any podcast we do on the Lead Up podcast. It's not meant to be a 2x4 to the forehead. It's meant to be a feather to guide you along, just to prompt you along to lead better, to lead up, to be excellent, to be an elite leader. And that's done in micro steps. It's not done overnight. We don't go from where we are to where we want to be overnight. I'm a huge fan of the 1% rule that James Clear writes about in Atomic Habits. 1% better every day. Share this episode with others. Get other leaders in a room. Have a lunch and learn together. Listen to this episode and others on the Lead Up podcast. Go grab a copy of Tom's book. Do a book study together on From Heart to Head and back again. Not only is Tom's stories brilliant in the book, he shared other leaders that are also brilliant. That I don't know why he put my picture on the cover of the book. It's probably going to impact book sales in a negative way, but all of them are brilliant in their own way. And we want to just challenge you to go learn from them and help your organization make a difference. Let's move us in a different direction this next year. Tom said this, we have to be bold and courageous if we're going to truly transform healthcare. It's not going to come from the government. It's not going to come from the insurance companies. It's not going to come from pharmaceutical companies. It's about money for them. Leadership is about heart. And we have to be bold and courageous in leading from heart. And so thank you for tuning in to this conversation. Tom, thank you for all that you do in the world of leadership and healthcare and just the message that you've put out and shared with the world and just for being a great guest on the Lead Up podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.